The air in Sterling & Co.'s opulent boardroom was as cold and sharp as the glint off the polished mahogany table. Marcus Thorne, the notoriously gruff and unyielding director of international operations, leaned back in his plush leather chair, a smirk playing on his lips. He was interviewing for a crucial role, and the latest candidate, a poised and immaculately dressed young black woman named Anya, sat before him, radiating a quiet confidence that seemed to agitate his rigid sensibilities. Her resume was a masterpiece of accomplishments, but Marcus had a reputation for judging people the moment they walked in the door. "So, Ms. Sharma," Marcus began, his voice laced with a subtle challenge, "your profile suggests a keen interest in global markets. What unique skill do you possess that would genuinely set you apart in a world as interconnected as ours?" He steepled his fingers, his gaze unblinking. Anya met his stare, a faint smile gracing her lips, not of arrogance, but of genuine self-assurance. She knew this moment was pivotal and that his dismissal was not just about her qualifications, but about the very sight of her. "Well, Mr. Thorne," Anya responded, her voice clear and resonant, "I believe my most pertinent skill in this context is my linguistic versatility. I am fluent in 6 languages." A ripple went through the room. Some murmured, others exchanged doubtful glances. But Marcus Thorne, a man who prided himself on his sharp wit and even sharper judgments, let out a short, dismissive laugh that echoed through the otherwise silent room, a sound so full of disbelief and condescension that it seemed to mock her very presence. That laugh, sharp and cruel, stung Anya more than any direct insult. It wasn't just a sound, it was a pronouncement, a judgment that dismissed her as unbelievable and inconsequential. The other directors present shifted uncomfortably, some casting apologetic glances her way, but none dared to challenge Marcus, who simply crossed his arms, his eyes still holding that cynical amusement. Anya, however, refused to be shaken. She had faced this kind of skepticism before, a silent code that said her achievements were less than what they appeared. "With all due respect, Mr. Thorne," Anya continued, her voice unwavering, "I assure you, it is not a claim I make lightly. My proficiency has been rigorously tested and applied in various cross-cultural negotiations. I find it allows for a deeper understanding, a nuance often lost in translation, which can be invaluable in securing favorable international deals." She paused, letting her words hang in the air, a silent challenge to his dismissive attitude. The room remained hushed, waiting for Marcus's next move. Marcus, however, merely waved a dismissive hand. "Linguistic ability is one thing, Ms. Sharma, but practical business acumen is another entirely. We are not hiring a diplomat. We are hiring a director to navigate complex market dynamics, not just charm foreign partners with pleasantries." His words, while not directly attacking her race, carried an unmistakable undertone of prejudice, implying that her skills were merely superficial, not truly substantial enough for the serious world of global commerce, particularly coming from someone like her. Anya felt a surge of cold resolve. She would prove him wrong. Despite Marcus Thorne's open derision, a senior board member, an older woman named Eleanor Vance, who rarely spoke but whose opinion carried immense weight, had been observing Anya closely. Eleanor saw beyond the surface, recognizing Anya's composure and the quiet strength in her eyes. After Anya had left the boardroom, Eleanor calmly yet firmly confronted Marcus. "Marcus," she stated, her voice even, "your dismissal of Ms. Sharma was unprofessional and, frankly, short-sighted. Her qualifications were exceptional." Marcus scoffed, leaning back again. "Eleanor, don't tell me you fell for that 6 languages trick. It's theatrics, nothing more. We need someone with grit, someone who understands the cut and thrust of global trade, not someone who can order a latte in 3 different dialects." He dismissed her concerns with a wave of his hand, utterly confident in his own judgment, a judgment heavily clouded by his own biases. The other board members remained silent, wary of crossing Marcus, but a seed of doubt had been planted in some minds. Eleanor, however, was not easily swayed. "Perhaps, Marcus," she said, her tone growing colder. "But sometimes pleasantries are the bridge to the most lucrative deals. A direct insult, however, is a bridge burned. I suggest you reconsider your assessment. Sterling and Co. can ill afford to miss out on talent merely because of preconceived notions." Her words hung heavy in the air, a rare and direct challenge to Marcus's authority. The room bristled with an unspoken tension, sensing a shift in the power dynamics. Despite Eleanor's intervention, Marcus Thorne, powered by his own stubborn pride and an antiquated view of success, ensured Anya was not offered the international director position. Instead, a less qualified but more outwardly aggressive candidate, a man named Bartholomew "Barty" Croft, known for his cutthroat negotiating style, was hired. Barty's appointment was seen by many as a clear endorsement of Marcus's old-school approach, cementing his control over the department and his preference for a specific type of leadership. Anya, however, was not entirely dismissed. Eleanor Vance, still convinced of her potential, created a new, seemingly insignificant role within the Special Projects Division, a sort of global liaison, and ensured Anya was offered it. It was a role that offered little power or prestige, designed more to keep Anya within the company's orbit than to truly utilize her formidable skills. Anya accepted, seeing a glimmer of opportunity where others saw only a consolation prize, a foot in the door of a place that had already tried to shut her out. The first few months were challenging. Anya found herself relegated to compiling reports that often went unread and arranging meetings that rarely led to anything substantial. Barty Croft, meanwhile, swaggered through the corridors, trumpeting his small victories and making pointed remarks about true international expertise. Anya endured it all with quiet dignity, observing, learning, and patiently waiting for her moment to prove not just her linguistic prowess, but her undeniable business acumen and resilience. A sudden catastrophic crisis struck Sterling and Co. Their most lucrative and long-standing international deal, a multi-million-unit contract with a crucial Eastern European consortium, began to unravel. The intricate web of negotiations had been handled by Barty Croft, who, in his haste to close the deal, had overlooked a critical cultural nuance embedded within the contract's fine print. What seemed like a minor clause in English translated to a grave insult in the local language, causing immediate and severe repercussions. The consortium, deeply offended, initiated proceedings to terminate the contract, demanding exorbitant penalties. Barty, flustered and out of his depth, tried to salvage the situation by re-engaging with his usual aggressive tactics, only to exacerbate the problem. His inability to comprehend the depth of the cultural affront, combined with his abrasive demeanor, pushed the relationship to the brink of irreversible collapse. Panic began to spread through the higher echelons of Sterling and Co. Marcus Thorne, usually so self-assured, was visibly shaken. This was his department, his hand-picked director, and the potential loss threatened to cripple the company's annual profits. Board meetings became frantic, finger-pointing commenced, and the once unflappable Marcus found himself desperate for a solution, any solution, to avert the impending financial disaster. The gravity of the situation became clear. The company was on the precipice, and Barty Croft's blunder had pushed them there. In the midst of the escalating chaos, Eleanor Vance, ever observant, watched Marcus and Barty flounder. She knew Anya had quietly been studying the specifics of the Eastern European deal, a habit she'd maintained even when her tasks were menial. Approaching Anya one afternoon, Eleanor tentatively asked if she had any insights into the situation, almost as an afterthought. Anya, without hesitation, calmly laid out the precise cultural misstep Barty had made, explaining the subtle linguistic trap embedded in the contract. Anya detailed how a specific phrase, seemingly innocuous in English, carried a connotation of extreme disrespect when directly translated and signed by a local dignitary, especially given the historical context of their region. She explained that the consortium viewed it not as a business oversight, but as a deliberate and demeaning act. Her explanation was clear, concise, and chillingly accurate, revealing a depth of understanding that none of the other executives possessed. Eleanor listened, her eyes widening with each precise detail Anya uncovered. She realized then the true scope of Anya's linguistic and cultural intelligence, a far cry from Marcus's dismissive pleasantries. Armed with this crucial insight, Eleanor immediately scheduled an emergency board meeting, urging Marcus to hear Anya out. Marcus, desperate and with no other viable options, reluctantly agreed, though he still harbored deep-seated doubts about Anya's ability to offer anything beyond theoretical analysis. The emergency board meeting was grim. The company's legal team presented their bleak assessment. The contract was irrevocably broken, and the penalties would be ruinous. Just as despair began to settle over the room, Eleanor Vance cleared her throat, drawing everyone's attention. "Before we concede defeat," she announced, "I believe Ms. Sharma has an understanding of the true nature of this dispute that we have overlooked." All eyes turned to Anya, who stood calmly, a beacon of composure amidst the palpable tension. Marcus Thorne, though his face was a mask of skepticism, motioned for Anya to speak. Anya began by reiterating the exact cultural insult embedded in the contract, detailing its historical weight and why it was perceived as a profound slight. She then proposed a radical approach, a face-to-face apology, delivered by a high-ranking Sterling and Cumbers official, but crucially, articulated in the consortium's native tongue, without translators, acknowledging the specific phrase and its impact. The room erupted in whispers. Marcus, recovering from his initial shock, scoffed. "An apology? We're a global corporation, Ms. Sharma, not a primary school. We don't grovel." Anya, unfazed, held his gaze. "Respect, Mr. Thorne, is not groveling. It is the foundation of lasting relationships, especially when trust has been shattered. And the apology, to be effective, must come from a place of genuine understanding, not through an interpreter. It must resonate culturally." Her words, though direct, carried an undeniable logic that began to chip away at Marcus's rigid worldview. Anya's proposal was met with fierce resistance, particularly from Barty Croft, who saw it as an undermining of his previous efforts and a public admission of his failure. He argued vehemently for a more aggressive legal strategy, despite the lawyers having already stated its futility. Marcus Thorne, still struggling with his pride, initially sided with Barty, but the dire financial projections presented by the finance director slowly began to chip away at his stubbornness. The company was bleeding, and every day without a resolution meant more losses. It was Eleanor Vance who finally swung the pendulum. "Marcus," she stated, her voice sharp, "we have exhausted all other avenues. Ms. Sharma's approach, while unconventional, addresses the core of the issue, the perceived disrespect. If we lose this contract, the consequences will be severe. What do we have to lose by trying something different? At this point, even a slim chance is better than no chance at all." Her words resonated, forcing Marcus to confront the reality of their desperation. Reluctantly, Marcus agreed to allow Anya to lead a final attempt to salvage the deal, but with severe stipulations. She would have only 1 week to travel, meet with the consortium, and present her case. If she failed, the deal would be officially terminated, and the legal team would pursue whatever meager options remained. The pressure on Anya was immense, a crushing weight of expectation, but also an extraordinary opportunity to prove her worth and, potentially, save the company from the man who had laughed at her. Anya wasted no time. Within hours, she had meticulously prepared her strategy, focusing not just on the apology, but on a comprehensive plan to rebuild trust and reestablish a foundation for future collaboration. She insisted on traveling alone, explaining that a smaller, more personal delegation would be perceived as more sincere. Marcus, still skeptical, relented, providing minimal resources, almost as if he expected her to fail. He truly believed he was sending her on a fool's errand. Upon arrival, Anya navigated the local customs with grace and respect, immediately setting a different tone than Barty Croft had. She requested a private audience with the consortium's leader, a formidable figure known for his unwavering resolve. When granted, she began not with business, but with a deeply felt, culturally nuanced apology delivered flawlessly in their native tongue. She acknowledged the specific phrase, its meaning, and expressed genuine regret for the unintentional slight. The consortium leader, initially stern, watched Anya intently. As she spoke, his expression softened, a subtle shift that went unnoticed by anyone but Anya. Her words weren't just translated, they were felt. She spoke of shared values, of honor, and of the importance of mutual respect in all dealings. By the end of her heartfelt plea, something profound had changed in the room. She hadn't just spoken their language, she had spoken to their hearts, something Marcus Thorne, with all his business acumen, had never understood. The initial apology opened a narrow window, a sliver of hope where none had existed. The consortium leader, visibly moved by Anya's sincere and culturally impeccable address, agreed to re-enter negotiations, but with a caveat. The terms would need to be re-evaluated, and a new, more balanced agreement would have to be forged. This was a monumental concession, a testament to Anya's unique approach, but the challenge remained immense. She had to secure a deal that was not just culturally acceptable, but also financially viable for Sterling & Co. Anya spent the next few days immersed in intense discussions, often working late into the night. She didn't just negotiate, she collaborated. She leveraged her linguistic fluency to build rapport, decipher unspoken cues, and understand the true priorities of the consortium beyond the immediate contractual dispute. Her ability to switch seamlessly between languages, and more importantly, between cultural mindsets, allowed her to bridge gaps that had seemed insurmountable to Barty Croft. Back at Sterling & Carber headquarters, Marcus Thorne waited anxiously, receiving terse updates that offered little comfort. He oscillated between hope and cynicism, still convinced that Anya's approach was too soft to yield concrete results. The board, however, buoyed by Eleanor Vance's quiet optimism, held its breath, knowing that Anya was their last best hope. The fate of the company, and indeed Marcus's own standing, now rested entirely on the shoulders of the young woman he had so casually dismissed. The culmination of Anya's efforts came in a marathon negotiation session that stretched over 2 full days. She didn't just speak, she listened. She didn't just present, she built consensus. Her ability to articulate Sterling & Cohen's revised offer in a way that respected the consortium's cultural values, while also safeguarding the company's financial interests, was nothing short of brilliant. There were moments of high tension, sharp disagreements, but Anya's calm demeanor and insightful interventions always managed to steer the conversation back to common ground. Crucially, she identified and addressed a previously hidden demand from the consortium related to local employment opportunities and skills transfer, something Barty Croft had completely overlooked. By incorporating this into the new contract, Anya demonstrated Sterling & Co's commitment not just to profit, but to partnership and community development, thereby transforming a purely commercial dispute into a mutually beneficial collaboration. It was a masterstroke of diplomacy and business acumen. Finally, after hours of intense back and forth, the consortium leader extended his hand, a rare gesture of acceptance. A new contract, meticulously redrafted by Anya, was signed. It wasn't just a recovery, it was a revitalization, promising even greater long-term potential than the original agreement. Anya had not only salvaged the deal, but she had transformed it, turning a catastrophic loss into a strategic victory. She sent a single understated email back to headquarters. Deal secured, terms more favorable than anticipated. The news of the salvaged deal sent a shockwave through Sterling and Comber. Marcus Thorne, upon reading Anya's terse email, initially thought it was a misunderstanding or perhaps a minor temporary reprieve. He immediately called Eleanor Vance, demanding clarification. Eleanor, a triumphant smile on her face, simply said, "Anya secured the deal, Marcus. A better one, in fact. You should be immensely proud." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow, a harsh realization of his monumental misjudgment. Barty Croft, upon hearing the news, went into a fit of rage, accusing Anya of underhanded tactics and questioning the legitimacy of the agreement. His unfounded accusations, however, only served to highlight his own spectacular failure and poor judgment. The rest of the board, however, was ecstatic, relief washing over them like a wave. The company was saved, their financial stability restored, and it was all thanks to the very person Marcus Thorne had laughed at, a young black woman he had deemed unqualified. When Anya returned, she was met not with a hero's welcome, but with a cautious respect. Marcus Thorne, visibly humbled and pale, approached her. He cleared his throat, struggling to find the right words. "Ms. Sharma," he began, his voice uncharacteristically soft, "what you achieved, it was extraordinary. I was wrong." It was a monumental admission for the proud director, a genuine acknowledgement of his error, and it spoke volumes about the depth of Anya's impact. Despite Marcus's unexpected apology, the aftermath of Anya's triumph was not entirely smooth sailing. Barty Croft, seething with resentment and humiliation, began subtly campaigning against Anya behind the scenes. He spread rumors, downplayed her achievements, and tried to sow seeds of doubt about the long-term viability of the new contract. He saw Anya not as a rescuer, but as a direct threat to his position and reputation, and he was determined to undermine her. Anya, though aware of Barty's machinations, chose to ignore them, focusing instead on solidifying the new partnership and ensuring the smooth implementation of the revised contract terms. She understood that true success lay in tangible results, not in office politics. Her calm professionalism, however, only seemed to fuel Barty's anger as he saw his efforts to discredit her falling flat against her quiet competence. Eleanor Vance, on the other hand, became Anya's staunchest advocate. She made sure the board was fully aware of the intricacies of Anya's success and how her unique skills had averted disaster. She highlighted the financial projections of the new deal, which indeed promised even greater returns than the original. Marcus, though still grappling with his pride, found himself increasingly siding with Eleanor, realizing the depth of his initial misjudgment and the true value Anya brought to the company. Marcus Thorne, a man who rarely admitted fault, found his worldview slowly but undeniably shifting. The relief of the company's salvation was profound, and the evidence of Anya's extraordinary capabilities was undeniable. He began to observe her more closely, noticing the subtle ways she interacted with international teams, the ease with which she navigated complex cultural landscapes, and the genuine respect she commanded from those she worked with. He started to see that her linguistic versatility was not a mere party trick, but a powerful strategic asset. He also couldn't ignore the stark contrast between Anya's diplomatic success and Barty Croft's aggressive failure. The company had almost been ruined by Barty's lack of cultural sensitivity, a flaw that Anya's skills inherently negated. Marcus began to feel a deep sense of remorse for his earlier dismissal of her, realizing that his own prejudice had nearly cost Sterling and Co. everything. The laughter, once a sign of his perceived superiority, now echoed in his mind as a painful reminder of his foolishness. In a rare moment of introspection, Marcus approached Eleanor Vance. "Eleanor," he confessed, his voice low, I truly misjudged Anya. Her abilities, they are exactly what this company needs for the future." Eleanor simply nodded, a knowing look in her eyes. "Indeed, Marcus. Sometimes the most valuable assets are the ones we initially fail to see." Her words, gentle yet firm, underscored the lesson Marcus had learned, a lesson carved from the edge of corporate disaster. With the success of the Eastern European deal, Anya's responsibilities within Sterling & Co. expanded dramatically. She was no longer a global liaison in a minor department. She was formally tasked with overseeing all high-stakes international negotiations. Her methods, once dismissed as soft, were now being studied and emulated throughout the company. The shift was palpable. Meeting rooms that once buzzed with aggressive, profit-driven discussions now focused on building sustainable, respectful international partnerships. Barty Croft, seeing his influence wane and his past failures magnified by Anya's burgeoning success, grew increasingly desperate. He resorted to more overt acts of sabotage, delaying crucial information, spreading false rumors about the consortium's long-term commitment, and even attempting to leak confidential company data to a rival firm. His actions, driven by envy and fear, became reckless and increasingly dangerous to Sterling & Co.'s stability. Unbeknownst to Barty, Anya had developed a keen sense for internal machinations. Her innate ability to read people, combined with her new, broader access to company information, made her acutely aware of Barty's destructive behavior. She didn't react with anger or confrontation. Instead, she quietly began to gather irrefutable evidence, preparing for the moment when she would have to expose his betrayal. The game was no longer just about business. It was about protecting Sterling & Co. from an internal threat. The definitive proof of Barty Croft's treachery came in the form of encrypted messages intercepted by the company's IT department, explicitly detailing his attempts to undermine the Eastern European deal and his contact with a competitor. The evidence was presented to Marcus Thorne and Eleanor Vance in a closed-door meeting. Marcus, his face a mask of shock and fury, couldn't believe the depths of Barty's malice. Eleanor, though unsurprised, felt a grim satisfaction that the truth was finally out. Marcus immediately moved to terminate Barty's employment, but Anya, who had silently compiled her own dossier, intervened. "Mr. Thorne," she began calmly, "I believe a discreet and swift exit, perhaps even a mutual agreement, would be more beneficial. A public scandal, especially one involving a former international director, could damage our reputation, particularly with our new partners who value trust above all else." Her pragmatic advice, focused on protecting the company's image, impressed Marcus deeply. Her suggestion was adopted. Barty Croft was quietly dismissed, his departure framed as a mutual decision for personal reasons. No public accusations, no bitter legal battles. Anya had not only exposed the threat, but also orchestrated its removal with a masterful touch, showcasing her strategic prowess once again. Marcus looked at her, a profound sense of respect replacing his former disdain. He realized then that Anya possessed not just talent, but also an extraordinary wisdom beyond her years. With Barty Croft's removal, a vacuum was created, and Anya's position as the de facto leader of international operations became undeniable. Marcus Thorne, recognizing her unparalleled contribution and the strategic vision she possessed, officially appointed her as the new director of international operations. The announcement, though anticipated by some, still sent ripples of surprise and admiration through the company. The young black woman, once laughed at, had risen to one of the most powerful positions within Sterling & Co. Anya's ascent was met with a mix of awe and a healthy dose of fear by some of the old guard who had underestimated her. They now saw her not just as a linguistic expert, but as a force to be reckoned with, a strategic mind capable of navigating the most treacherous corporate waters. Her journey served as a powerful testament to the fact that true talent and integrity ultimately prevail over prejudice and short-sightedness. Marcus Thorne, having undergone a profound personal and professional transformation, became Anya's staunchest ally. He publicly championed her vision, defended her decisions, and worked alongside her to implement a new, culturally sensitive approach to all international ventures. The company culture began to shift, moving away from aggressive, transactional dealings towards more collaborative and respectful partnerships, all thanks to Anya's groundbreaking influence. Under Anya's leadership, Sterling & Co. underwent a remarkable transformation. Her focus on building genuine relationships, coupled with her strategic use of cultural intelligence, opened doors to new markets that had previously seemed impenetrable. The company's global presence expanded significantly, not through aggressive takeovers, but through mutually beneficial partnerships founded on trust and understanding. Her soft approach was proving to be far more lucrative than any cutthroat tactic. She restructured the international teams, prioritizing linguistic fluency and cultural training for all new hires, ensuring that future interactions were never again marred by the kind of misstep Barty Croft had made. She instituted new protocols for market entry, emphasizing in-depth research into local customs and traditions before any deal was even conceived. Sterling & Co. was no longer just a corporation. It was becoming a truly global entity, respecting and integrating diverse perspectives. The financial results spoke for themselves. Profits soared, market share increased, and Sterling & Co. garnered a reputation as an ethical and insightful global player. The Eastern European Consortium, once on the verge of severing ties, became one of their most loyal and profitable partners, often citing Anya's initial apology and her continued dedication as the reason for their renewed commitment. Anya had not just saved the company, she had revitalized its very essence. The impact of Anya's leadership extended beyond just the bottom line. Her success became a beacon of inspiration within the company, particularly for younger employees and those from diverse backgrounds. They saw in her journey a clear path to achievement, proving that talent, hard work, and unique skills would ultimately be recognized and rewarded, regardless of initial prejudice or dismissive laughter. The old, rigid hierarchies began to crumble, replaced by a more meritocratic and inclusive environment. Marcus Thorne, once the embodiment of the old guard, embraced this change wholeheartedly. He became an advocate for diversity and inclusion, often sharing Anya's story as a powerful example of how preconceived notions could blind one to extraordinary talent. He ensured that the company actively sought out and nurtured diverse perspectives, recognizing that it was these very differences that would drive future innovation and global success. Eleanor Vance watched it all with quiet satisfaction, knowing that her initial faith in Anya had been unequivocally justified. She saw not just a successful director, but a catalyst for profound cultural change within Sterling & Co. A change that ensured the company's longevity and relevance in an increasingly interconnected world. The woman Marcus Thorne had laughed at had not only saved the company, but had also transformed it from within, proving her capabilities beyond any doubt. Anya's journey at Sterling & Co. culminated in her unanimous appointment to the company's executive board, a rare and swift ascent that cemented her place as one of the most influential figures in global commerce. She continued to champion international collaboration, pushing the boundaries of what a modern, globally aware corporation could achieve. Her story became a legend within the industry, a powerful narrative about resilience, cultural intelligence, and the triumph of true talent. The initial laughter, once a source of humiliation, became a powerful symbol of her remarkable journey, a reminder that prejudice often masks a lack of foresight. Anya often reflected on that moment, not with bitterness, but with a quiet understanding that sometimes the greatest breakthroughs emerge from the most unexpected places and from those most easily dismissed. Her success was not just personal, it was a victory for everyone who believed in the power of genuine skill and understanding over superficial judgment. And so, the story of the director who laughed and the black girl who knew 6 languages and then saved the company became a celebrated tale. It served as a potent reminder that innovation, profit, and true leadership often lie not in the loudest voices or the most aggressive tactics, but in the quiet strength, profound intelligence, and boundless empathy of individuals like Anya. If you've been moved by Anya's incredible journey and want more stories that inspire and challenge, please subscribe to our YouTube channel.